Welcome to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered with Perry Clark. This program looks at mental health from unique perspectives and shows you how to manage your life by finding the knots that help you and stay away from the ones that could be a disadvantage. Now, here is your host, Perry Clark.
Hello all. Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist here with you. And as always, want to give the disclaimer that this podcast is for education and entertainment purposes, and it does not constitute working with a licensed professional in your area. Please seek one out in your area to work on your healing. So, as you guys all might remember from one of our earlier episodes, we had author and mental health worker David Archer, who is a mental health social worker as well as a marriage and family therapist, on talking about his work, anti-racist psychotherapy, and his fiction work, Black Mountain. Well, he's got two other books, which we're having back with us for this month of Black Celebration, Black Pride, Black History to talk about as well. So, David Archer is an anti-racist psychotherapist from Montreal, Canada, who recognizes the unceded land, and I'll let him say the name of that when he comes on. He has worked for decades in the mental health field. He is keenly aware of the needs of underserved populations, including members of the African diaspora or the MAFA, survivors of colonization, and those persons who have experienced intergenerational trauma. David is a INDRIA-approved EMDR consultant and course provider. He maintains a full-time practice and is often recruited to provide consultation services to other therapists and organizations throughout North America. His expertise has been influenced by the principles of mind, intersectional feminism, I should say, and critical race theory. He is one of the few mental health practitioners in Canada who provide EMDR, brain spotting, EFT, and other mind-body strategies utilizing memory reconsolidation and working memory taxation methods. As before, you've heard him talk on here on our podcast. We've had him talk about the anti-racist psychotherapy confronting systematic racism and healing racial trauma, which explains the philosophy behind anti-racial practices and the mental health consequences of race trauma. It's available on Amazon, as is his other book, Black Mountain. But today, we're going to hope to talk much more about his other two books, which are Black Meditation, the 10 Practices for Self-Care, Mindfulness, and Self-Determination, and Racial Trauma Recovery, Healing Our Past Using Rhythm and Processing. So, David, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here.
Likewise. And for those who are just catching this for the first time, can you give us a little tidbit of how you got here?
So when I was younger, I'm in this province called Montreal, Canada, and the original name of this land is Tiohtià:ke. And when I was younger, I had no choice but to know that I was going to either fall into the categorization of being Black, white, or Indigenous. Mm-hmm. There were like some others, but in my town where I was growing up, it was like 99% white Quebecois and 1% me. So I was clearly aware that there was a difference between myself and others that were out there. And my parents are Jamaican. So I'm a second generation Black, African, Jamaican, Canadian. And so I was also aware that my Jamaicanness was different from other Black people that would be there. And my Jamaicanness was very different from other people who consider themselves as Canadian. Not too much shade on Canadians, but we need some more seasoning up here once in a while. But, the thing is that growing up in this context meant that I needed to be aware of the different levels or the different, I could say, because I call them the 4 cores of anti-racist psychotherapy, is that there is an individual level, there's a racial trauma level, there's a family systems level, and there's also a social political level. So even from a young age, I had no choice but to engage with the concepts of what anti-racism was, even before I even knew how to spell the word. So I was trained as a software engineer. So I was very interested in the idea that people could have complex problems and we can use computer code to resolve these problems. While I was studying, or while I was working with this one guy in his very small office, trying to code and trying to learn how to code and trying to do it well, I'd pass the times listening to audio of like a hypnotherapist. And I was listening to music, I was listening to all types of things, but I was very interested in the idea that you can use words and a person can feel more confident or they could change their state. And so while I was working, I was studying, listening to this stuff and thinking it would be so awesome if I could also use words to help other people improve their confidence. So after being able to improve how I felt about myself, I was thinking, well, I want to study more about instead of the information system that's within the computer, what about the systems that rule our thoughts? What about the systems that we are all a part of? So I did my bachelor's of psychology, master's of social work, master's in family therapy. I became an EMDR therapist because when I was working in Indigenous communities with people who had addictions, I realized that the treatment for addictions wasn't taking into account their culture and also wasn't taking into account the trauma, which is at the root of why they're self-medicating. Whenever you see an addict, they're taking medicine. They're taking medicine in order to heal from a wound. And so we not only need to find out how to make it so we heal the wound instead of just correcting the behavior, we also need to make it so that we're able to heal something that's a little deeper, which was the trauma, which is at the core. And so I learned EMDR therapy. Emotional freedom technique is what it's called. That's what EFT is. So it's an acupressure based approach. I also, now that we mention it, I was also trained in being able to use Reiki, so energy therapy, because I was in a cultural environment where people were talking about spirits and spirituality. And so I wanted to make sure that I could speak their language. This is not a therapy technique, but I also spent several years learning Ganyan-Gahaga, the Mohawk language of the Ganyan-Gahaga people, so Ganyan-Geha. And because I saw that being able to say their names, not their English names, but saying their name in their language, it just created cultural trust. And it also showed that I wasn't trying to come from a Western colonization perspective. And so all of these things led me to start to think that there may be a more efficient and more effective way of being able to help people. So learning EMDR, becoming an approved consultant, giving presentations to these international societies for the study of trauma and dissociation, the ISSSTD, giving presentations at EMDRIA and other conferences led me to believe that it's not only me who was raised in an environment where there are these multiple levels of existence, and there are many therapists who are also trying to find out how do we address the person as a whole being. And that's what led me to develop rhythm and processing, which is the subject of the third book that I came out with. And rhythm and processing is a way of addressing the mental health consequences of racial trauma by using memory reconsolidation and helping people to reclaim their awesomeness. We're trying to find out how do we make it that therapy is relevant? How do we make it that therapy is also effective? And how do we make it so that people are able to look forward to being able to heal from their traumas once and forever?
Very nice. Well, and I think very much, and also what you said is something that is lost. The idea of cultural humility for some is that aspect of learning to speak the language, whether it is in the standpoint of the Reiki and the spiritualism of the people, as well as beginning to speak the language of the people itself. And as you said, the power of using their actual name.
Yes.
And there is, if you read Ursula K. Le Guin's books, you know that names have great power.
Oh, yes.
You know them.
Oh, yes. And I found that when I was speaking to people who were from indigenous places, whether indigenous to Africa or even indigenous to North America, it's like sometimes their name would carry a significance that even relates to the presenting problem.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so interesting of as much as when I wanted to know more about the person who was in front of me, I would learn more about how they had these internal resources that could also be used to help them to heal and recover. So it's a beautiful thing. And so I feel that to some degree, our field uh, came about and gained prominence because of the medicalization that's within it. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to make it so that it could be seen as scientific. But the best therapists are not the ones who are in their heads, it's the ones that are in their heart. The best therapist is the one that's able to go to that place so that we open it up so that the client can go there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so as I learned about the depths of my own experience, knowing that as humans that we're much more than just the physical reality, that we're emotional beings or spiritual beings and all these things, then it helped clients to also tap into something that's a little deeper. And that's what I'm trying to do with rhythm and processing, of making it that my clients come in like let me talk about this client just last week. Is that we were trying to resolve an issue, and sometimes a client will come in with unsolvable problems. So they come in with a problem that the therapist does not know the answer for, and the client is also feeling stuck as well. And that's because a lot of our problems are kind of based on things that are outside of our consciousness and conscious awareness. There's the iceberg, the stuff we can see and the stuff we can't see. So the idea then is we may be able to solve problems without words. We may be able to solve problems without by bypassing what we see in terms of the iceberg. So using the RAP technique, the rhythm and processing technique, we were able to process the stress that they had about their workplace, feeling as if it was something that they couldn't resolve by watching videos of their favorite Japanese anime.
Right.
So the positive feeling,
videos.
Yeah,
or the kitty videos,
yeah. And the positive feeling that comes out of that, of seeing their favorite fighting character, the smile that comes onto their face is disconfirming to the experience of stuckness that they have from their workplace. And then insights come from them instead of from me. And that is what we were trying to do. Instead of having the pattern of the expert therapist and then the client who knows nothing, we're trying to make it so that the client is able to take their rightful place as being the best therapist in their lives.
Which is very counter, as you said, to the medicalized aspect of the doctor is the one who's supposed to cure you from whatever ailment has happened, even if that ailment is something that your body has naturally decided it's time to do. And in that same vein is the standpoint of the idea of the manualization, that this can apply to every human, and every human is universal in the exact same way, even though we're not. We do have a lot of commonality places, but that doesn't also play itself out mentally.
Exactly.
Because as I know I've said to others, is people were wounded in relationship to other people. If they're going to heal, they have to be in relationship to people as well, not, lo and behold, machines. But that doesn't mean that the persons who wounded them are the right people to maybe help them. And I think that's a conceptual thinking that does not enter our field as much as it really probably should be reminded of.
Yeah. And that's why I think it's up to us. Having this platform is something that helps. The reason why I developed this psychotherapy and the reason why I write is because I'm writing the books I've always wanted to read. And I'm hoping that me being able to write in this way can inspire other therapists, whether they're students, whether they're in the field, to also think differently, of knowing that everyone has the ability of being able to create something that's very different. And this therapy also comes up because I feel like I was getting stuck with the previous approaches that were relying on just, the insights that are just from the therapist. And I feel that there's a well of knowledge that is usually untapped in our sessions. I think that this is something that you see as an MFT, is that there's something about when we let the system operate, it's going to come up with solutions that can exceed even what the MFT, what the therapists themselves is aware of. And so I wanted to find out if it's possible for us to also access the internal family structure that is within an individual. Because with traumatization, what will take place is that there's a spectrum of trauma that's there. So if we go with the theory of structural dissociation, we know that PTSD is on one end of the spectrum, and then there can be complex PTSD and then dissociative identity disorder. I found that even if a person doesn't have the diagnosis of DID, they're still composed of multiple aspects. And Richard Schwartz has spoken about that with internal family system, et cetera. But I think that there's a way of being able to bring in the youngest part of the client, the most vulnerable part of the client, the adolescent part of the client, and heal all members of the system. And this is something that I just want to share it. I just want to let people just know that this is what can be done.
Exactly. And one of those other variances on that I don't think gets talked off often, but was a big one at my school, is psychosynthesis as well.
Okay.
Which is in that same, it's in that same aspect of that there are the multi parts of self, of what is the parts. Yeah. What the roles may not be so much about family, but essentially the archetypal energies that might be seen for this person as well.
Yes. Yes. And so that's why I think there are many. So I'm not as familiar with psychosynthesis. That's not something that I was trained in, but I think that there's something that is appealing when you speak to an individual and you let them know that there's more to them than meets the eye. I think there's something that is intuitive about that for many people. And I think that moving people towards integration, moving people towards the idea that they're able to have peace within themselves reduces the chance that they'll be in this conflict. We might have spoken about it when we were talking about Black Mountain Fight for the Future, that even though it's a science fiction novel, it speaks about the themes of trauma. And I think it speaks about how when there are traumas that take place, there's a fracturation in the person's mind that they end up seeing them parts of themselves as an enemy. And so I tell my clients all the time that there is no enemy that is within you. And when they are able to heal from their trauma, when they heal from their suffering, my words just become like the reality, like even deeper than the words. It's that they feel it at the experiential level, because it's a beautiful thing.
Well, also the flip of that is that the parts of themselves that are needing the most protection, that they've sectioned off and hidden away, but hidden away so well that they've forgotten where they put it. And that aspect of, I know there was a part there. I know it, but I know it's safe because I can't remember where it is. So that flip side of not just fighting themselves, a part that they know is so safe, they've thrown away the key and forgotten where they put it.
Yeah. And for when you say that, it makes me think about dissociation. It makes me think about the survival basis of dissociation is that a lot of times we look at it as pathological, is that the person who's been traumatized has hidden away an aspect of themselves in order to protect that part of themselves from further harm. And that itself is, there's a courage that's in that as well. Of course, there's a fear basis to it as well, but you need to have fear in order to have courage. But that's a topic for another time, or I could get into it, but there's so much to dive into. But I always, even if the client presents with something that is like depression or anxiety or dissociation, I also help them to see how important it was that a younger aspect of themselves formed this mental health issue in order to help. The intention was there of trying to make it so no further harm would come to this vulnerable aspect of myself. The intention was there of making it so the depression sets in so that we look inwards, the anxiety disorder so that we look outwards to prevent further harm. When we're able to use the concept of utilization, then we're able to know that the mental health issue, although it's seen as pathological, that we have our DSM-5 that's going to list all of the problems that exist in the person's mind. We also need an extra book that's going to list all of the awesomeness that is within people as well. We need something to counterbalance it, because we're trained to look out for pathology. And if we only look in that way, then we can end up feeding into this narrative that the client is not as awesome as they actually can be.
And there can also be the problem, too, where the systems that are supporting them also adds to that traumatization of feeding to that idea of pathology.
Oh, yes. So
yeah,
again,
that's one of the things I think is also, again, is forgotten in our field is there are systems that are there to help save people. There are systems there to destroy people as well. And
unfortunately,
sometimes they get mislabeled.
Unfortunately. I oftentimes think about how it's like that Donald Trump was elected president. And, the thing is that I feel it's like, because now again, is that as a Canadian, we watch you guys' news, maybe to distract from our own problems in our own country, but we have no choice, because if you guys do something, if you guys elect somebody, we are going to face the consequences, because you may decide to. You guys may think that border doesn't have a big enough wall, we're going to invade it. So this is the reason why we need to pay attention to you guys' politics. Okay. It makes me think about Dr. Jennifer Fried spoke about this idea called DARVO, which is so deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. And the skill that Donald Trump has of that people see him, even though he's a multimillionaire, they see him as the biggest victim. And many of the people who are his biggest supporters, I think, do not have a lot of resources, either emotional, physical, relational. I think that they lack a lot of resources, but to him, he represents something that's very important for them. I think about how the people, when you're talking about systems that cause pain, some of the times the people who get into the positions of the highest influence usually do that out of a fear to some degree, that I don't know, that they could be locked up, or that that they could be convicted of things, just putting things out there, or they do these things in part because sometimes the people that are managers for jobs, they're not always the most empathic. Sometimes the people that are at the highest levels of influence, the CEOs and all that, are not always the most ethical. But there's something about power that is there. And I think that's part of the root of why there are so many systems that work against our whole society. That's part of the root why we will say that it's systemic racism, is because some of the people that are in decision-making capacities are some of the most wounded. These are some of the people that have hurt the most, or are most traumatized, or are furthest away from the idea that there is no enemy that is within you. And that pushes them to put themselves in a position where they will be protected at all costs. And so I feel that everything, because I look at things in this way, I feel that everything is a metaphor. When I look at things in this way, I think of how important it is for us to make a society where even the people with the most power, that they don't have to live in so much fear anymore either.
Which is part of why anti-racist psychotherapy and racial trauma recovery is such an important book.
Yeah.
I admit, as we said before we started, I'm about halfway through the book. And there's also part of me saying, it's like, so when are you running a training that I could attend so we can talk about this and have the experiential side of it beyond just reading the book?
Yes. So I'm developing a training for rhythm and processing at this moment. And probably by the time people hear this, the training will be available.
Very nice.
Because, so I wrote the book in part because there was a mass shooting that happened in, I think it was Buffalo, New York, I believe. And so not only was it that there were clients, but there were also therapists that were looking for a way of being able to conceptualize race and racism in a way that was least, or not as traumatizing and not as re-traumatizing, that they're trying to find a way of being able to put the ideas of anti-racist psychotherapy to use.
Mm-hmm.
So I consolidated everything that I was already working on, and that's what created to this is what led to the emergence of rhythm and processing as a therapeutic framework. And so I wanted to find a way that we could help individuals and also help groups, because part of the trauma and the re-traumatization that I think happens in your country and mine is what we are consuming in our media. There are many clients who come to me with racial trauma issues, but not because of what they've experienced individually, but because of what they continue to consume through social media and continue to experience vicariously. So rhythm and processing technique then comes about in a context where, you know, COVID was technically still a thing that people were afraid of. Some people are more afraid of it. Some people aren't. Some people still have conspiracy theories. Some people have less. But the thing is, it comes about in a time where we're still experiencing and grappling with the ramifications of the racial violence that is ongoing and happening in multiple ways. And it comes through a way of being able to find out, because again, I'm the only Black male EMDR approved EMDR consultant in my country. I don't know if there are any others, and I'm trying to increase the numbers. So it comes at a time when we need to find a more efficient way of being able to do this, where we need to start to think about how do we help people who are in groups who are affected by these mass shootings and exposure to the media and these things. And that's where this book comes in. It's also a technologically advanced form of helping people to heal and recover. I still work virtually, although I can do the approach in person. Virtually has allowed me to help more than just the people in my Montreal area. And it's allowed for some people who've had disabilities who can't get up all the stairs to my office. So we need something that's not only anti-racist, something that's also going to fight against sexism, ableism, and all the different isms that are there, and that can work with individuals and with and work with systems themselves.
Yes. Well, that's also a standpoint of having your future training in this be something that can be done virtually allows it to get out to as much of the world as possible.
It will be. It's there. And I'll put you on my mailing list. And anyone who wants to be on the mailing list, feel free, archertherapy.com, because the revolution only happens with everyone being involved. I feel that you're also talking about my 5th book. I don't think we were intending on speaking about it, but I'm going to be.
Did we talk about a 5th book last time?
There is a 5th book. So the 5th book is called Transforming Complex Trauma, Reflections on Anti-Racist Psychotherapy. So
we got a lovely cover on this too. Butterfly
thank you.
And such. So
yes.
Okay, yeah, I hadn't seen that one, and it's going to be adding to my order list.
Fantastic. So Transforming Complex Trauma was meant to consolidate the ideas, all of the things that we're actually talking about in this conversation. And it's meant to be a shorter book. Even though I tried to make it as short as possible. My brother was like, these books are too long. I can't read all of them. So I tried to make a shorter one, and I failed, because the thing is, it still is as long. It still is like 40,000 words, because there's so much to talk about.
Yeah, but let's be frank and say it's complex. That's not going to be something that you can just basically pare down to a sentence, or not even just a paragraph. These are complex structures.
Agreed.
That has both caused people to fight, but also for people to protect themselves. And part of me is saying, well, maybe then we need to have a 5th ring for the anti-racism, talking about power. But no, that's probably built into all the other rings as well. So
yeah.
So there's no need for a 5th ring.
Yeah, and it's okay. It's my brother was complaining about it, but he's my brother. He'll have to deal with it. It's okay. He'll forgive me. He'll find a way. So the thing is that for Transforming Complex Trauma was more speaking about why it is that racism is so embedded in our society. I recently gave a talk at the University of Michigan talking about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy, and also talking about the innovator that he was, that his words are still, even though he's saying it in the 60s, his words are still so relevant today. And talking about how there are things that are unchanging in our society, things that transcend time. And that's why this approach for healing people from their experiences of complex trauma we need to go back to the past in order to change the way how they feel in the present so they can change the journey of their future. And we need to use it, we need to do it in a different way. And so in that presentation, I spoke about how many of my clients, when they talk about racial trauma, they're not always talking about, you know, a white guy that's playing Halloween with a hood over his head, or like, you know, that's not always what racism looks like from day to day. Most times it's that I've been denied a promotion, or most times it's that I just can't pass the glass ceiling, or there's microaggressions at work. And so there's something in all of our fields that that teaches us and re-instructs us how to be racist. And so that's why I spoke about science, or statistics relating to racism in dentistry, racism in gynecology, because we all have the similar racist foundations from Darwin, you know, from Carl Linnaeus, from Blumenbach, who created the term Caucasian, which is a word that shouldn't be in any scientific text, but it is because of racism. And so I'm trying to explain that the problem of racism is always intersectional. The problem of racism also needs to relate to poverty. The problem of poverty also needs to relate to militarism. And we can't solve one without also having the courage to resolve the others.
Yeah, because they're all interconnected, and
you got it.
Changing that interconnection is a very big one. Because I mean, there's even that sample, like you're saying, going back to the stuff that of the past, is what was necessary then for society to function versus what is necessary now.
There we go.
For society to function. I mean, just popping even into our sci-fi fantasies. I mean, I immediately started thinking of as you're talking about it, it's like something that's being carried forward into the further is like the television series The Expanse. You've basically got three factions, all who came from the exact same planet, all who are human. You have Earthers, you have the Martians, and then you have the Belters. All still human, all still needing the same DNA, all still needing the same medical technology, but somehow just because of the conditions in which they have lived in, they now have an identity that says they are not all the same.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's why I think it's the strength of science fiction, of being able to speak about reality and make it seem as if it's not. You know, it's like, it makes it so certain concepts are, I think Star Trek was one of the first like television shows to show like interracial like kissing or something on TV. It's like, I think that it's really important for us to just know that many people, even if you're not a therapist, there are ways that you're able to use an anti-racist therapeutic intervention in the work that you find yourself in. And so that's why I don't think that my work is only for psychotherapy. I think it's for everybody who can benefit from psychotherapy, which is the whole population, because there's a similar multi-generational, but more like societal level transmission of trauma that takes place. This is the reason why racism seems as if it's an unsolvable problem. But I really think it seems that way because we need to upgrade our technology.
Right. And coming back to the persons or individuals, or everyone was harmed in relationship to other people.
Yes.
To heal, we need to be in relationship to other people who have the skills, the space, the vulnerability to do so in healing it.
You're reminding me is that there are some traumas that take place that don't involve others. But I feel that, like, if a person is traumatized because of a machine, like if they're wounded at work or if they are in a car accident, those traumas don't always impact people the same way as betrayal traumas do. And there's something about when trust is built up between people that causes dissociative symptoms that we see. So betrayal trauma, cultural betrayal trauma by Dr. Jennifer Gomez, but also institutions can betray people as well. You'll hear that some people will say, like, you know, like, I love my workplace, or I love my school, or like they love an institution. But Dr. Jennifer Fried spoke about institutional betrayal, that there are ways that institutions they have no reason for love. It's like a well-oiled machine that's just operating. So you can love it, but it can, like, being in the structure of it can cause some stress. So
well, I mean, and the biggest tool of that is HR.
There we go.
HR is, despite what I know, if there's probably be some flack for this, but HR is there to protect the business, not necessarily the employee.
There we go. And so you see, like, when I had a client who had an issue with one of their coworkers, went to HR for help, and then HR wasn't able to provide the help, sometimes the symptoms that they had would be a little different from what one might expect. But it's because it was seen not only as if, like, they followed all of the rules, they sought help, and then the help attacked them further. So then it was no surprise that they would be bedridden and end up having dissociative symptoms as well. So this is why we need to make sure that we have the right technology and also the right framework as well, so that we don't end up victim blaming our clients. But when we're speaking in this way, we know about the systems, we know about the way how it impacts not only the mind, but the body. And putting that together helps us to be in a better position to help people to heal from these things, or to at least support them so that they find a better job or something.
Oh, I'll move on. And even that standpoint of consider creating your own business.
Yes.
As opposed to continuing to depend on the larger business. Because, again, this is part of that unhealthy gobbling mechanism, that destroying mechanism, that system that's set up to continue to destroy as opposed to...
Yes. Yeah, and amen to that. I always wanted to work for a Black business, so I became one. And lo and behold, now I'm working as a Black business. This is my job, and it's my dream. I think I do this because, like, I always wanted to become the therapist I always wanted to meet. And I know that there are some other people out there as well that, I speak to people from all walks of life, and that they're seeking, like, that type of blessing as well. And because I spoke a little bit about vicarious traumatization, I got to speak about vicarious growth as well. Is that there's something transformative about having these types of discussions. There's something transformative about being able to see people heal from unsolvable problems. And when they heal from these unsolvable issues, there's a compassion that develops in them for the younger and more vulnerable aspects of themselves. And this is a compassion that keeps on giving. So if we are able to heal an individual, we are also helping to heal their relationship. If we can help them to heal their relationship, we are also helping to heal the relationships that are around them. They become better workers, better managers, less racist individuals, less toxic individuals to be around. And ultimately, if enough people are able to help enough people to recognize their ability to heal, then we could create better communities.
Yeah. Which makes me think of something that, again, could be a rabbit hole we could spend an entire other time talking about, but especially the standpoint of going back to our younger inner selves. Our younger inner selves are also still operating off of a principle of fair. And what happens when, again, the insolvable problem they're dealing with is actually being insolvable because they're operating on the idea that it has to be fair. That the outcome of whatever they need to fix has to be fair. And as very much we see this too, not just with betrayal trauma, but what I would refer as people who are seeking emotional justice versus what can be considered physical justice.
And talk a bit more about that.
Well, okay, so the idea that we go to our legal system, somebody's either getting sued or thrown into jail, but that doesn't mean that they've necessarily will recognize the pain that was caused to the other person or the significance of what that has done to the other person. They just move on. But for that person, they want that acknowledgement of their wounding, of those experiences. And that's sort of that's that emotional justice they want to be, is that recognition. And how then can that then get twisted into revenge sentiment? And that standpoint now where there's a part of them that will go and do something profoundly stupid that actually makes things worse. And that aspect of talking about the emotional justice, the moral wounding that is connected with all of that, that isn't happening on a human connection, that especially for what is taught to us first and foremost as kids, and then we have to unlearn as we become adults, is that relationship fair?
That's interesting. So it sounds like you're speaking, for me, I understand it as restorative justice. And that was something they practiced in the indigenous community I worked at, where they're talking about how sometimes you don't need to get the law involved in a conflict between certain community members. Or if the law is involved, the punishment doesn't need to be like what the federal government will say, but it can be something that's agreed upon between community members and all of these things, which I think is probably how it used to be. Like, you know, this is probably how it used to be before the systems were like fully emerged and all that, and we became fully immersed in them.
Right.
At the same time, I feel that there's a traumatization that happens when we're young that makes it so that it is true that they may be hurt because things should be fair, but many times they carry the negative belief that says, I'm bad, or like, I'm not good enough. And I feel that that is even more detrimental than the belief of this is not fair.
Right.
They end up carrying a belief about themselves rather than it's like they've come to define themselves because of the bad thing that has taken place. I do think that while there are some things that are not fair in our society, including the racism, the sexism, and all these things, a purpose that some of these unfair things give to us is it gives us the motivation to talk about anti-racist psychotherapy. It puts us in a state of mindfulness that we need to actually know why it is that we are fighting for fairness. I think it is possible for us to have a fair society, but enough people need to, and I think that there are some workplaces that are equitable. There are some systems that do function from a place of trying to raise up people instead of trying to beat them down. But we need to heal from these injuries that have taken place and learn discernment.
Very true. Very true. And I think it's one of those where it's sometimes also an aspect of what do people, as we said, this is complex. Not every explanation is going to suit for every person to understand this standpoint of either the restorative justice or that need, or in some cases it might be easier for them from a framework to understand the idea of emotional justice. And so the aspect is, we're not saying any one of these is better, or the standard way to describe it. It's what's going to be most effective for the client to understand what they're actually needing to work on. This is where I use the term emotional justice, especially in relationship to betrayal and betrayal trauma, which very much seats with this standpoint of a kid trying to understand what's fair, who got the larger piece, who did or didn't acknowledge them.
It's like, I think that for people to heal, there is a belief that they need to get some type of reparation or some type of vengeance in the worst possible cases. But then after I think about my clients who have been treated unfairly by people who have died, or treated unfairly by people who no longer are in the physical realm or in their physical space. But then when they go home, they're still suffering because of this belief that reflects back onto them. And that's why I think in a psychotherapy that's going to consider anti-racism, we need to bring it to that spiritual level as well. There's a healing that needs to take place in us. Forgiveness just takes one, but peace takes two people. We may not always get peace between different parties, because this is just the way everyone has their own trauma histories and everyone has their lessons about it. But I think it's so important for us to cultivate like at least a self-forgiveness that takes place, not a forgiveness of anyone else before that first initial self-forgiveness that helps a person to know that they can still love themselves regardless of how fair the world has been to them.
So I think that's a beautiful place for us to take a pause here.
Mm-hmm.
Here on Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered, I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with David Archer, licensed marriage and family therapist and master social worker, because we have Canadian designations here. So stay tuned. We're going to be talking on the second half about the other book, which we're here to also talk about, not just the aspect of racial trauma recovery, which is the book we've just been talking about, and I know in broad forms, and eventually the training, which I know we're all going to be going to once that's available as well. So stay tuned. We'll be back shortly.
Want to see what Voice America is up to behind the scenes? Follow us on TikTok at Voice America Talk Radio.
Our lives and the world around us can get messy and frustrating. Untangle and Grow Counseling's focus is to untangle that mess and make sense of it so you have a good foundation to build and grow from. Visit us on the web at untangleandgrowcounseling.com. Perry Clark offers individual psychotherapy, couples and family therapy, and adolescence therapy from a variety of coping materials and resources. Visit untangleandgrowcounseling.com for more information.
Tune in to the Voice America Variety channel on the Voice America Talk Radio Network. Voice America Variety broadcasts a diverse array of topics, reaching a global community. Our experts come from all walks of life, and the topics they discuss are everything from current events, arts and entertainment, leadership, parenting, relationships, self-improvement, career advice, and a variety of other topics. Check us out today. You're sure to find something of interest. Voice America Variety. Talk on today's hot topics.
Success starts here. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com. It's your world.
You are listening to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. If you have a question or comment about our podcast, send an email to pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. That's pclark@untyingknotspodcast.com. And now, back to the program.
Hello, all. Welcome back to Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. I'm Perry Clark, licensed marriage and family therapist, here with David Archer, licensed marriage and family therapist and master social worker in Canada. And we've just been talking about racial trauma and recovery, and as well as both the book as well as the future training that's coming on. And one of the other books, as I mentioned at the top of this, was also Black Meditation, 10 practices for self-care, mindfulness, and self-determination.
Yes.
How did this one come about?
So this one came about because I realized that being the only Black male therapist in my city that knew this approach was making it so that a lot of people were seeking my assistance. And I needed to find out a way of being able to make it so that even if a person wasn't interested in meeting with a different type of therapist, or even if they I had some difficulties being able to find referrals for these individuals because of the systemic injustices that are just built in my province. I wanted people to be able to find a way of being able to heal from their suffering by accessing their inner resources. So we also spoke about this during the break, is that there have been some white therapists who have used the audiobook version of this book so that I would work as a co-therapist with them. I don't know if they owe me like royalties or something like that, but anyways, this is what would happen is in the book, it's me explaining a meditation or guiding a person through a meditation and me being able to help people to be able to respond differently to the stresses that they're going through on a regular basis, and also being able to use specific tools that can help people to create a better, positive Black racial identity, and also help them to access resources that everybody has access to. When we're younger, we have very little difficulty being able to feel happy for no reason. But then when we get older, we become traumatized, we become burdened, we become held down by experiences that take place because of racialization, gender, even the immigration process, et cetera. There are things that happen to different types of people for different types of reasons. But through the types of clients I've met a lot of people from different backgrounds. I've been able to find that there's this untapped joy that exists within all people. There are these resources of courage and confidence and love and all these things that exist within all people. And we are able to use the ability for us to sit with our suffering to acknowledge it, but we are also able to use these the infinite creativity that is within these emotions to be able to keep these feelings at bay. And so it is a pleasure to be able to make it so that even if a person doesn't want or doesn't have the ability to go and see a therapist, that this book, that the words can help them on their journey anyways.
Awesome. So you break it down into several different sections that you're meditating on. For example, there's cultivating the purpose goal as it sits. There's discipline through breath and body, envisioning a direction, gratitude writing, blessings and affirmation of the spirit, courage steps outside of your pattern, and just to name a few. There's a few other ones in here, and I know I've used the loving meditation, severing attachments, and loving attention one recently with several clients.
Super important, especially for therapists as well, is that when we are therapists listening to stories of people's suffering, whether we like it or not, we are creating a connection with them. And so the therapist, I think, is most skilled because they're using intuition. They're looking at a person, they're tuning into all the emotions. They're even, to some degree, they're tuning into the trauma history of another person. So what I found is when I was focused more on using talk therapies in the past, I needed to use these skills to cut off the connections that I had in between sessions. Even now, if I have a client that is presenting with really strong emotional material, I got to cut those cords off before I go to bed and chill with my son, chill with my partner and any of that, because it's like there's an accumulation that comes with us being able to witness suffering and sitting with suffering. And so meditation, I think, and these skills that are designed for us to make it so that we connect back to our body and that we move that we're able to discern what is ours and what is not ours, are really helpful for not only just therapists, but anyone who's working with other people and in their energy fields.
Which brings us back to the Reiki aspect and that spiritual standpoint. So could it also be said that it's safe to say that Black meditation is one of the outshoots of all this work around spirituality too?
Well, I think that we are all living a spiritual experience. It's just that we've deluded ourselves into thinking that the mind is different from the body and that these things are separate from the spirit. If you, in the book, we talk about ancient Kemet and the Kemetic way. So in ancient Egypt, the way of looking at it was that mathematics was not separate from spirituality. That language also was not separate from a person's belief in spirituality as well. And even like some of the hieroglyphs are referring to universal concepts. So for us, when we, like, again, my name is David, and I know it's a biblical thing, and, he killed Goliath and all of these things, but there's some people's names that don't really mean a lot. No disrespect, but some people's names it's just the name, it's just what the thing is. But
very much the cultural concept of naming a child for the purpose or influence it's supposed to have in the world.
Yeah. Look, I'm a big fan of video games, but I've seen some people that they've been named after video game characters. It's like completely clear. I haven't seen, I've met some Marios that are not Italian. Okay. I'll put it in that way. Okay. So the thing is, it's just, and no disrespect, Mario's a great name. It's a great video game also. The basic idea is that there's something about Descartes and the I think therefore I am ideas of being able to separate of saying that because of my thoughts, this is what makes me a being. it also, okay, and some philosophers may not like my interpretation, but it's okay. Go see a therapist and work it out. Okay. The thing is that what we need to do is we need to think that our worth is not something that creates, or our work is not something that creates our worth. The thing that we produce oftentimes is tied to our worth in a capitalist system. What I'm saying is that a person is pure, divine, beautiful, spiritual because they exist. They don't need to do anything separate than just existing in order to be worthy. And I needed to put that into that book of like showing that you are able to tap into your awesomeness by just sitting. I think it is super important for people to just know that they come from greatness. And I don't remember which chapter it was, but I spoke about the unknown ancestor. So there are some times where we will say that we are great because we come from kings and queens. And that is helpful. But again, it's tied to the idea of dominance and tied to the idea of worth and wealth and all of these things. I like the idea of there's someone who, despite the odds, despite the obstacles, they were able to save one of my ancestors who was a young baby. And maybe they did it in ways that were unsophisticated. Maybe they did it in ways that were not as quote unquote civilized as what we might do here. But they were able to make it so that someone was able to continue on my genealogy. So I think in the same way that we put this attention towards, I come from ancient kings and queens, I think who's even more important than any of those kings and queens is my ancestor that has no grave. That it's an unmarked grave. My ancestor who maybe didn't go to university or college. It's my ancestor who was able to survive. And it's by their grace and by the work that they did is the reason why we're having this conversation. I think we need to be able to honor even the things that have no name. We need to be able to show love and appreciation for those ancestors and that strength. Not the strength that's in Wikipedia, not the strength that's in your Oscars or any of those things. We need to acknowledge that there is something great that we all come from.
Yeah. And I know also, like I said, there's scholars who are going to be angry at you. I know there's that classic story of Queen Nzenga who negotiated certain deals with the white merchants, and the merchants basically had a rug for her to sit on. But was never going to be on the same level with her. And she motioned for one of her staff to essentially assume a position that allowed her to be on equal footing with that. And I know I personally say the strongest person in this room was not that queen. The strongest person in this room was that person who kneeled for the entire length of that time, unmoving, for this to be able to happen.
There we go.
That's the person I want to honor more.
There we go.
I acknowledge what this queen did, but I acknowledge that person far more. Exactly.
That's the basis of it, is that you're black because you're beautiful because you're black. Is that you don't need a reason in order to seek the beauty outside of yourself. It's like all that glitters is not gold kind of type of thing. Is that we are the gold. As I said, I worked with people who had spiritual beliefs. I have spiritual beliefs as well. And recently, last week, I had to tell a person who was using energy crystals to protect themselves from negative entities. And again, coming from their perspective, I said, I can see why you would be using this and that you're using every resource that is at your disposal. I also want to remind you that you are the crystal. There's something about us that we believe that there needs to be something that we get before we get there. But the idea with meditation is that you're already here.
Which I would also again wonder, for our conversation before when we were on the break, is how much is that because it's easy for them to follow an idea of a certain story principle of that structure without realizing how much power lies within them, just because of all the stories that we've been told. So, who knows? Well, I know also we need to be wrapping up with respect to time and so forth. And so I was just wondering, is there any particular meditation you would like to close out with for people to carry forward with them today, going forward, especially in celebration of this month of us and our power and our beauty and our love?
So the meditation is that you are Black because you are beautiful. You are beautiful because you are Black. For any person who's listening to this, regardless of who they told you your racial group belongs to, of knowing that we all are descendants of mitochondrial Eve, who was a Black African woman. I say this not to try to privilege the idea of Blackness or not to try to privilege one group over another, but for us to do away with the delusion and to understand we are all family and we are all trying to find our path back home. When we are able to heal from the trauma of the past, we are more readily able to see it for what it was, of understanding that we are all people of value. We all come from a common source, and that all the fancy things that are out there, there are some things that are even more important. And so in the same way that you'll see that there's an interest in yoga, and just knowing that Kemetic yoga, African yoga was a thing as well. In the same way that you'll see in psychotherapy, there's an interest in mindfulness, of just knowing that conveniently we tend to keep Africa out of, like we'll talk about like Eastern philosophies and all that stuff, and you guys skip over continents and all these things.
Yeah, they go east-west and they never go north-south either.
Exactly. So what I'd like for people to know is that home is where the heart is, and it's right here. And also just to know that that we're all one family. And Black meditation is helpful even if you're not a Black person. I had clients that are Asian and all that who told me that it's been very helpful for them. I've had white therapists that have said that it's helpful for them as well. There's audiobooks for anti-racist psychotherapy, for Black meditation, and the other books as well. No audiobooks yet because time. But the thing is that I'm working as hard as I can to just make it so that healing is something that people will be able to have in the grasp of their hands, and that we need to, as therapists, we need to step up and start to find out how do we make it so that therapy is something that's not just for the rich people? How do we make it that therapy is not only going to treat the racism, but it'll treat also the issues of poverty that are in the society? And how do we make it so that we see that mental health is a human right? There's too much trauma. There's too much war that's happening out in the world. We need to get serious. So I'm doing everything that I can with every waking moment of reading about therapy, writing about therapy, and sharing this message, because I feel that people need to know that they can heal, and we need more healers, and we need more people to know that they're beautiful because they exist.
As always, I think that's a beautiful place for us to go and wrap for today. And I want to thank you for sharing the books that you've written. And so I'm going to go at some point get that fifth book that you've written, as well as I'll be signing up for the rhythm and reprocessing class when it's available. And that people can find you at your website, which is
archertherapy.com.
All right. We'll have that in those notes. And thank you again for being part of this.
Thank you, Perry.
Talking about it. I know we had a moment during our break where we were talking theories and so forth, and either way we understood we were talking about the same thing, just from different sides, different angles, and different approaches, but still understood we both want to see healing done.
Of course.
It's just, what's the mechanism and who are we working with to get them to that place? Because there's many paths up the mountain, not a single one. So stay tuned for the rest of what we've got for this month of Black celebration, Black joy, Black pride, and Black history, because history is still being made today and going forward, and that history is yours today. So stay tuned. I'll be back for more in future. Bye, folks.
Thank you for tuning in for Untying Knots, Minds and Souls Untethered. Be sure to join your host, Perry Clark, for another episode on the podcast coming soon on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.